Of all the new products that Apple is releasing this year, there is one in particular that I think a lot of people are curious about, and that is the upcoming iPhone 17 Air, a new ultra slim model from Apple that is thinner than any iPhone before it. But up until this point, we just haven't known that much about the device. How thin is it actually going to be? How much is it going to cost? And what features has Apple put inside of it? Well, recently we've learned the answers to all of that, and today I want to show you what the iPhone 17 Air is going to look like. Because the more that we learn about this phone, the more interesting that it gets. Okay, let's start off with the new design, of which I've noticed 3 distinct design attributes that Apple is working with here. And you might be wondering why I have an iPhone 6 in my hand, an 11-year-old iPhone. Well, it's because today it's the thinnest iPhone that Apple has ever made, actually, measuring in at just 6.9 millimeters. I'm showing you this just as a reference point because the iPhone 17 Air is going to be 20% thinner than an iPhone 6, measuring in at just 5.5 millimeters from what we're hearing. A further 20% reduction might not sound like much on paper, and even in our renders just looks a little bit thinner than current iPhones, but in your hand, I genuinely think the 17 Air will feel closer to a piece of paper than a working smartphone. Second big change is also going to accentuate that further, as Apple's changing the material that they make the 17 Air out of. Right now, and for a long time now, iPhones have had big glass backs. They look nice, they feel premium, and they enable wireless charging, but they add a lot of weight to the phone, something that Apple wants to get rid of at all costs on the 17 Air. So this year, just like on the iPhone 6, Apple is switching back to aluminum, and specifically said to be using an aluminum unibody design that wraps around the edges of the phone and connects to the display on the front. But wait a second, wouldn't this mean no wireless charging on the 17 Air, considering that the whole reason Apple switched away from aluminum back in 2017 was to enable Qi wireless charging on the iPhone? Yes, that is technically true. However, the streets are reporting something different. I don't want to dive too much into this, but word is that Apple has figured out a way to make wireless charging work through an aluminum back for the first time. No idea how, I'll believe it when I see it, but that is what the streets are saying. And I think that's the only way this aluminum design actually makes sense. Maybe the third major design change is the most striking on the 17 Air though, as Apple has completely revamped the camera system on the back to now be placed in a black glass camera bar that goes across the entire top portion of the phone. It's a look unlike anything we've seen before from Apple, and I almost wouldn't believe it, except we've seen chassis for the 17 Air leak out already, and they look one-to-one with the other files that have been floating around, and I just think that this is the design. Now, you will be getting the 48 megapixel sensor that has the 2x telephoto zoom in through software, and it'll look pretty good for photos and videos. But it is interesting that it does have the same number of lenses as Apple's new, cheaper iPhone 16e. And I can't help but notice this is a third parallel between the 2014 iPhone 6 that also had a single lens and a super thin design. But you know what doesn't have a single camera? The iPhone 16 Pro, which is my daily driver and a phone that does not have great battery life for me, which is why I partnered up with EcoFlow, who sponsored today's video. This is the EcoFlow Rapid Magnetic Power Bank with a 5,000 milliamp hour capacity that can charge your iPhone ridiculously quick. This rapid charger uses EcoFlow patented Xtreme technology for flagship smartphone level energy density and fast charging capability to balance the compact size with impressive power. With ultra-fast Qi 2 wireless charging at 15 watts, you can power up an iPhone 15 Pro from 0 to 50% in just 42 minutes, which is almost twice as fast as others. But EcoFlow didn't stop there, as there's an additional option to help you charge even quicker using the built-in USB-C cable. You can power up an iPhone 15 Pro from 0 to 50% in just 25 minutes, which feels just as quick as plugging your iPhone into the wall. It's impressive they've built it into something this small and portable. By the way, it's also got a great MagSafe connection. You snap it on your phone, and I've tried to shake it off, get it to move around, and it stays locked on. And when it comes time to recharging the actual power bank, it's also super quick. You can go from 0 to 70% in as fast as 33 minutes, which is more than twice as quick as the competition. I also love that the rapid power bank is exclusively USB-C, whether it's the extendable cable or the charging port on the side. It makes it universally compatible with all of your latest devices, as well as being super versatile when you're on the go, whether you need to charge up your iPhone or your AirPods or something larger like your MacBook. On top of everything else, there's some really cool bonus features too. On the side, there's a button button so that when you press it, you can see how much of the power bank is being used and even dynamically changes whenever it's actively charging. And just above that, there's even a flip out stand. So if you want to watch videos in vertical orientation, you can do that, but it works in landscape too, which is clutch for the situations where I don't have a bigger screen around and I want to sit back and just enjoy a video. Right now, you can check out the EcoFlow Rapid Wireless Magnetic Charging Bank for yourself when you use my link down below in the description. A huge thank you to EcoFlow for sponsoring this one. Now let's get back to it. Now, up until this point, we've seen the sleek design of the iPhone 17 Air, but we haven't even talked about the display yet, which is actually going to be potentially one of the best screens Apple has ever put on a product. It is going to be a 6.6-inch OLED panel with 120 Hz ProMotion. As finally, later this year, Apple's getting rid of 60 Hz on all of their flagship iPhones. So every iPhone 17 model will be equipped with a 120 Hz ProMotion display for the first time. Considering how thin this device was, I was worried about Apple not including a 120 Hz display, but all of the rumors say that it is going to happen on this model, which is great to hear. And specifically, it sounds like Apple's using the exact same panel currently found on the iPhone 16 Pro. So exact same technology, contrast ratio, brightness, that's all going to be present on the 17 Air, which will make it feel way more premium like a Pro model. At the top, we once again have Dynamic Island, and although initial rumors said it would be smaller this year, that is not going to be the case, at least on the 17 Air. It sounds like it'll be one-to-one identical with the Dynamic Island that we've had for a couple of years now, although the camera inside is getting way better. It's upgrading from the current 12 megapixels to 24 megapixels now, so front-facing selfies and videos are going to look almost twice as good as they do on current iPhones. As we look around the rest of the 17 Air though, here's where things get a little weird again. On the side, we've got the standard action button and volume rocker setup, but below that, there is not going to be a SIM tray. And in the US, that's been standard for a while, but Apple has always released their flagship iPhones with SIM trays in the global market. That changes this year on the 17 Air. This time around, Apple's not even doing it just to push eSIM or a different type of SIM technology forward. They're just doing it because they ran out of space on the inside of the phone. With something this tiny, every millimeter of space counts, and removing the SIM tray gave them extra room for other components. Then if we take a look at the bottom of the 17 Air, things get even weirder as the USB-C port is slightly closer to the back of the phone than the front. It's not exactly directly centered on the Y-axis, which is a small change again because of limited space. And although I have a hard time believing this one source is saying there's only going to be one speaker on the phone. You know how iPhones have the two speaker cutouts on the bottom as they've had pretty much forever? Apparently on the 17 Air, there will be no speaker cutouts on the bottom, and the only speaker is in the earpiece on the front of the phone. Now I know, I don't really believe that because it sounds like too insane, but the more that I think about this phone and just how thin it's going to be, I could see Apple making some compromises in places like that just to actually achieve this design and ship it out the door this year rather than delaying it and waiting to figure it out later. And we haven't even gotten to the interesting stuff on the inside yet, like the fact that this phone is going to have the A19 chip from Apple, which will of course be faster and have improved graphics, but also feature 8 gigabytes of RAM for Apple Intelligence and any future AI features that Apple builds into the iPhone. But okay, in hearing all of this, I had to start wondering about the battery life in this phone. If it's really 5.5 millimeters thin, sure, it might look cool and the phone of the future, but if it doesn't last more than a few hours, nobody's really gonna want to buy it. I was thinking about this for weeks, and all of a sudden, these three rumors, and some from Apple themselves fell into place that explain exactly how the 17 Air is going to be possible and how Apple's going to give it good battery life. The first is Apple's C1 cellular 5G modem that they first debuted in their $600 iPhone 16e. It's just about as fast as previous modems that Apple has used, but most importantly, it has one characteristic above the rest, and that's the efficiency. Apple says the C1 is 25% more efficient than any other modem ever used in the iPhone, and more efficiency means more battery. The 5G modem is historically one of the most power-intensive parts of the iPhone, which you've probably noticed if you're ever in an area with bad cell service, your phone dies really fast. The C1 modem in the 17 Air is going to be a huge lift just on day-to-day usage. But then there's the second thing. The 17 Air will also be the first iPhone to use a custom-designed Apple Wi-Fi and Bluetooth combo chip, two other parts of the iPhone that don't draw as much power as cellular, but still use a decent amount of the iPhone's battery over the course of an entire day. When Apple announces this, it'll likely be another 10 to 20% more efficient over a previous part, which again lifts that daily battery life even more. But setting those to the side, I think it's a third reason that is actually why it's possible. Apple said to be using a new kind kind of battery in the iPhone 17 Air. According to a new rumor, it's called a high-density battery, and while there is no technical information as to what makes this different than a standard battery, I have to say I found it interesting on the iPhone 16e, Apple talked about how they redesigned the battery and the structure of the pack specifically for that phone, giving the iPhone 16e 4 hours of battery life more than a standard iPhone 16 model, even though it was cheaper. Maybe I'm reaching here, or maybe Apple's kind of laying out the foundation for how the 17 Air is going to be possible. I really think that they would not release this phone if the battery life wasn't at minimum as good as iPhones now, and I have a feeling it might actually be better. Maybe though, you're just looking at the iPhone 17 Air a bit confused. Why is Apple working this hard to make an ultra thin iPhone? Why not just make it a little bit thicker and try something else with a larger screen? And the answer is that Apple's kind of tried this in the past already with a larger and a smaller screen. They've had 4 iPhone models on sale since 2020. They release 4 new ones every year. And while the base model as well as the 2 Pros sell fine, there's that weird one in the middle that has been a mini in the past or a plus a little bit later on that has never been great, only accounting for about 5 to 10% of all the sales, where Apple would want that 4th model to be an equal 25%. So that's why this year Apple's rethinking this 4th model. They're getting rid of the Plus, they're not bringing back the Mini, and they're trying sort of a combination of both. Okay, so then considering that the iPhone 17 Air is replacing a previous mid-tier iPhone, how much is this phone going to cost? Well, according to recent rumors, it's not going to be the ultra expensive high-tier model that we initially heard about, and rather it's going to sit at about $900 to $1,000 like the previous Plus model, which honestly makes sense considering the single camera, the screen size, and the good but not insane specs. And it's kind of cool because it feels like Apple's trying something again. For years, it's felt as if Apple has been playing it so safe with the same looking iPhone year after year after year. And even if there are some weird compromises or odd changes that Apple is making on the 17 Air, I still think it's better than what we've had for a long time. Not to mention the 17 Air is one of 3 total redesigned iPhones that we're getting this year, as the iPhone 17 Pros are also getting a major design refresh, which I'll be giving you your first look at those in my next video, so stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, really helps me out, super appreciate you guys. Hit subscribe for more videos on the iPhone 17. I've been Sam, I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.